Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics pre-season live show ahead of the 2025 AFL Fantasy season. And it's good to have football back. We finally have some games of footy to talk about, which is very, very good, including that very, very good spectacle that was the Indigenous All-Stars and Fremantle game last night. Very much enjoyed that. So we'll chat about that, the Bulldogs-Essendon game, and then a couple of intra-club games as well. But as I said, footy is back, and we are all very, very happy. I'm your host, Bales, and you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials. And for those listening back on the pod, it's Sunday, the 16th of February. I got that right this time, not December. It is February. If you are listening back to the video of the podcast, make sure you join us next time live on YouTube. If you do have a question or play you want discussed as well, if you are tuning in live, then put it in the comments on the live chat. And we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. So, yeah, as I said, thanks for everyone tuning in live. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can hit the 4K subscriber mark with a massive 2025 ahead. Joining me tonight is two of my co-hosts and fellow fantasy fanatics. It is Tim. I'll start off with Tim, mate. How are you?
I'm good, mate. It's been good to watch some footy.
I don't know if you got down to the game last night in WA, but obviously you got to catch that. How'd you find that one?
No, I didn't get to the Indigenous All-Star game yesterday, but firstly watched, Dogs and Melbourne. Wasn't a very good quality stream, but it was good to be watching some, like I said, some footy, getting a bit of an idea about how teams are going to shake up and, you know, who's kind of stepping up and all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, look, I did watch the All-Star game on TV, but it was good to watch. Certainly plenty of bloody talent there, that's for sure. But yeah, look, I'm keen for the West Coast Richmond practice game at I think it's 9:30 tomorrow morning. So yeah, bit strange to have a practice game on a Monday morning, but I'm curious to see what happens.
Yeah, unbelievable that there's two games tomorrow and everyone's at work and they didn't have any games today. Can't believe it. It's just a pretty simple decision. But anyway, Jordox, mate, our other co-host, mate, how are you?
Yeah, very well, mate. Good to be on. Yeah, good to have footy back in some respect. I'll probably stop short of saying footy's back, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. Actually, you know what? I think we need to give a shout out to all those people on Facebook and X who, I don't know how they do it, but have somehow put together the fantasy scores from like intra-club games. I just think that is such a mad, such a great commitment to helping us out. So shout out to all those stats nuts who are doing that for us. And I just never thought I'd be making decisions on players based on what they scored, the fantasy points in an intra-club game. That's how much we can't wait for the real stuff.
Yeah, we don't overreact to these pracky games and match sims, do we? We don't change our team 50,000 times every single day. But yeah, no, shout out to I think it was AFL Fantasy Enigma that was putting out all those scores. So shout out to him as well, doing a lot of good stuff with his content over the preseason. So looking forward to seeing what he does in the actual season. But joining us tonight, a very special guest. It's been a long time coming, been messaging him on the socials, and we've been trying to organise something. We finally got him on. He's the draft expert and draft guru, and he's got his own YouTube channel. Dylan Alexander follows draft, but it's good, very good to have Dylan on the show. Dylan, mate, how are you?
Good, mate. Good, mate. I'm really happy to be on. I've followed you guys for quite a long time, just been an avid fantasy player over the last couple of years. So it's really good to finally be here. As you said, we've chatted a lot, but pretty much what the other guy said, so happy to have the football back, and went to all of the games across the weekend that I could, checked it all out. So just keen to get into it and chat some fantasy.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really looking forward to it. So we are going to be chatting about, as we said, the pracky games that have been happening, but also get your perspective on a few of the rookies that we've got. So it'd be really good to see who we're putting on our watch list and who we should be ranking quite highly and putting into our seasons. But before we get into the stuff, we've got a bit of a big announcement to post about on Twitter. It's been a few months in the works. A few other people have been doing it, which has been fantastic. But the AFL Fantasy Fanatics have officially released their very own Patreon. It is now live. So just for reference, anyone tunes on YouTube, all the content stays exactly the same. All the daily content, everything stays the same. This is for extra content, bonus content. There'll be a short video on YouTube releasing after the pod that'll be sort of going in what we're doing. But we're doing like a Monday night live stream where people can tune in and can even join the stream, chat about their team, +3, -3, trades, what they think, and any questions they've got. Tune in for that. There's a cash league as well exclusively for Patreon members as well. So there's a heap of other stuff as well. But as I said, I'll be releasing a video for that and also putting up an image on Instagram, Twitter, everything, so you guys can look at that. And if you want to get involved as well, head over to patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. So really, really keen to be getting on board. All right, well, we will move on to the match sim and training notes. We'll start off with on Friday. The Adelaide had their intra-club game. So I've got a few notes here. So thanks to I keep forgetting the name. I know Simeon, I forget his name, that works for the advertiser, put up the stats, and then George from FTTV as well. So shout out to those guys there. So a few notes. So we'll start off with James Peatling, who obviously is a very cheap midfielder, so value mid for us. Played predominantly midfield and was everywhere, racking up the ball. Sid Draper played in the A team with Rankin, obviously, at the Indigenous All-Star game. So he was obviously very impressive as well. Be interesting to see how that midfield mix does shape up with Rankin back. And then the other midfielder was Jordan Dawson, was very good as well. Played predominantly midfield, had a short stint in the first half on the wing, but besides that was all midfield. And then Isaac Rankin, as we said, didn't play, but even Saligo played on a wing, which was very interesting with Rankin missing. So, Dylan, I know you were chatting about, made a video about the Crows and how you think that midfield mix will shape up. So how do you see their games from what you saw of the intra-club game? Obviously, I know the stream wasn't necessarily amazing, but what did you take from that? And how do you think it'll shape up heading into the 2025 season?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I mean, the three that sort of stand out to me, if you take away, like Rory Laird, looks like he's going to halfback, potentially even out of the side kind of long term. We'll probably have a different conversation about that. But if you're looking at those, how the balance is going to work for it, you're looking at Peatling, who's probably going to be that more defensively minded sort of midfield, back of the stoppage type player. Dawson's going to be that sort of, I guess, like bigger body in there. At times going to play on some of the opposition's best, like your Paddy Cripps, Isaac Heaney type of players, those bigger bodied ones from the opposition. And then Isaac Rankin, I feel, is going to be the one that's sort of in there from that sort of strike point of view, that really offensive sort of meters gained, kicking the ball inside forward 50. So I sort of see those as the three. And then you're going to have guys like Matty Crouch sort of coming in and, pinch hitting in there. I still see Saligo as, one of the players that's going to be in there long term. And of course, Sid Draper, who I think they're going to be looking to get centre bounces into as much as they possibly can. So I think as far as who's going to be eating up the most of those centre bounces, for me, it's Dawson, it's Rankin, and it's Peatling. And that's probably on a balance of things the best way that they can go. But I do think they're going to be trying to get games into particularly Draper and Saligo as those like other two younger ones coming through.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how everything shakes up there. Jordox, we did hear, obviously, Isaac Cumming early in the week speaking on 7 News Adelaide was saying that he looks like wing is going to be his main position, and it seemed like him and Wayne Miller were swapping between halfback and wing. Does that rule out Cumming as an option just with Peatling and an Ollie Hollands and a few other these options there, and we got some rookies? Does that put him in an awkward spot, or do you think there's still a case to be made, even on the wing, he could still be an option?
I think it makes it tricky. I mean, for my side and the way I've looked at it all preseason, it's kind of been Cumming or Peatling. And, the way that the summer's gone, it's all heading in one direction. I mean, the thing with Cumming that appealed was, does he get that defender status, someone you can flip to the back line maybe in round 6? I still haven't completely ruled that out as an option. I think at the moment, and I take him at his word because he did say the other day he's looking like playing wing, maybe a little bit inside. But I still wouldn't be surprised if, as the year rolls on, he ends up in the halfback role. So, unfortunately, that rules him out for a starting spot. But don't be surprised to see it down the track later in the year, him moving towards the back line. I want to ask Dylan just quickly. I mean, I really liked what you said about the Crows midfield makeup and agree with it. I just wonder where Sam Berry fits in this isn't probably all that relevant. It's probably just me wanting to pick your brain because I really like him. And with Peatland coming in, and Matt Crouch is still there, I just worry Sam Berry's being wasted, and I can see him sitting in the sandful again.
Yeah, I mean, when I did that sort of lineup video, I sort of had him coming in as a sort of bench option or one of those sort of high half forwards. I think from an impact per possession point of view, I think he can be really valuable inside forward 50 because he does, he's got that power and explosiveness in his game to kind of break through at some of those forward half stoppages, which I think is really good. Probably where he lacks as an overall midfielder, he does seem to sort of drift out of games for me. He can have, periods of time where he's just not touching the footy. This is probably not particularly relevant for fantasy, right? But you've probably got, I'm just trying to think of the players. You've probably got Pedler who's fighting out for that sort of extra high half forward position. You've got maybe someone like a Dowling, and there's probably a couple of other guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they.
Neil Bullen straight into that role as well, so that's already
and he was absolutely class in that game on Friday from what I saw. Just heaps of the ball, and he was really running as well. So it's going to be hard to break into that, particularly that Crows forward line, because if you look at the Crows holistically, pretty much all of the talent is from the midfield to the forward part of the ground. It's probably where it's all sort of stacked up. So it's going to be difficult to get in there. And I think the question for Matty Nix is going to be a question probably of balance more than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. One of those players in the forward line, I think we playing there, Dan Curtin, was very good, was brilliant up forward from what people were saying, took plenty of marks, and we've been hearing from all of the teammates at the Crows been saying that he's just impossible to tackle. So I think he's going to be someone. We'll chat a bit about him a bit later, being one of those rookies that we're going to consider. And we'll get Dylan's thoughts on him, but he's going to be someone we're going to be considering as well. So they're the main notes from the Adelaide Intra-Club game. Obviously, they switched teams at the half, and obviously Rankin wasn't there. So it'd be good to watch them against Port on Friday. Hopefully a full-strength side, and with Rankin back, it'd be interesting to see how that all goes. Moving to the next
before we move on, I wouldn't mind asking Dylan. Look, I know you're pretty hot, Bales, on Jordan Dawson. Last year, obviously, we saw him get thrown around a fair bit, kind of filling a few different roles and a bit of having, a little bit of a flaw. How do you see that playing out this year? Because I know, he's one of those kind of pretty relevant players that people are considering.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think there's going to be a temptation to have him as that sort of full-time midfielder, just given that Adelaide don't have a lot of options in the really sort of bigger bodied midfielder. Like, you need to get that size in there when you're going up against, like I said, like players like Patrick Cripps. You sort of need someone like Jordan Dawson in there just to compete with that kind of force level. I sort of thought coming into the season that they might try to run a Dan Curtin through the midfield, but he looks to be playing forward. So it's really difficult because the one area that I feel like Adelaide as a team really lacks is that sort of, key intercept player. And because Jordan Dawson has so many strings to his bow, like he's such a Swiss Army knife, it's going to be a bit of an idea for Matthew Nix to put him behind the ball as well, I think. Like, we know he does that a little bit. He did push forward at times. I know fantasy coaches were a bit upset at times when he was played as a forward, and it obviously caps his scoring there a little bit. But I don't really know where you're best to use him. You obviously want your best players around the ball, but he's such to win the ball back off the opposition, he's such a threat back there. And I don't know. I think it's going to be a way up between what Isaac Cumming can do. And I'll probably throw this back to, the Adelaide supporters here, in the sense that where would you see Isaac Cumming? Because I think he sort of plays into Jordan Dawson's long-term role as well, as far as that player, that sort of medium to tall defender that can sort of win the ball back, that third tall type. Do you see Cumming, you touched on it before, Jordox, but do you see Cumming as sort of a wing or a half-back?
Yeah, I've been saying it since the moment we got his signature that role was set for him. I think Wayne Miller's fitness and, returning to the senior side is going to be maybe a bit of a hurdle for that. But, yeah, I think Laird goes back, and I think they're going to want the ball in Cummings' hands. But so far, it feels like he's more wing. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
The other player that I sort of noticed in the match sim, just in that sort of talking about that player behind the ball as well. Before we go, like, just you mentioned Guesty there, Jordan Dawson, sort of what he's going to do from a midfield perspective. But the other one was Worrell, that kind of caught my attention. He just seemed to be intercepting the ball a little bit more, playing as that sort of loose defender. And he was also taking a few kick-ins back there from what I saw. So I don't know, like, he may be a player that they try to get the ball in his hands a bit more, and that could affect Jordan Dawson as well.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing with Dawson is as long as he's not sitting forward, that's fine by me. If he's going behind the ball, we've seen him rack up +6s and get involved with that, take kick-ins as well. So if he's playing midfield and then every now and again drifting back, I'm definitely taking it. So he's sitting currently my side, and I'm getting more bullish as we get closer to the season as well. So we'll definitely see how that shakes out. We'll move now to the North Melbourne Intra-Club game where, Dylan, obviously you're in attendance for that, which is fantastic. And I think you're a North fan as well, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah,
really
I'm a sneaky North fan. Don't like to make that too public with how we've been playing over the last few years. But yeah, was in attendance for this one, probably from a fantasy relevant perspective. I mean, I assume there's still a lot of people kind of starting Harry Sheasel at the moment. I mean, he was pretty much just your absolute like all-encompassing midfielder, attended a ton of centre bounces. I think he racked up 34 disposals for the game. He pushed forward at times just to start up there a little bit, but he's so impactful and he sort of floats into the pockets for those marks. So I think he's going to be one that could really match that average that he put up last season, even though that does have a bit of the time that he spent at halfback built into that score. But I don't know, you could sort of see him as the type of player, just how driven he is, that he'll, he can sort of like go again on that average that he put up. And the way that North Melbourne do like to play, they don't have a lot of, key position players forward of the ball to be able to sort of target. So they do tend to like to play that sort of chipping the ball around, coming off halfback. They don't like to play too direct. And I think that kind of plays into Sheasel's hand because he sort of floats into the pockets around the half forward space. The other one that I noticed in a big way was Tom Powell. I think in the end, he had about 29 touches. Looks to really have kind of cemented one of those midfield spots down, albeit you do have the looming George Wardlaw kind of coming for one of those positions when he gets back in. So how that balance is going to look will be interesting. But Tom Powell, if he starts and Wardlaw's out of the team, I think there's probably a temptation there. The other one for me is probably Finn O'Sullivan, someone that I saw play a lot last year in the draft, and he was playing off a wing. But we know what North have done, like Clarko, what he's done with first-year players, playing them off the half-back line. So I think he's another one that can really, probably someone that if he plays in that half-back position, he could average something up around 75, 80, I think, something like that.
Yeah, just on Sheasel, I remember seeing a clip today. He was on a podcast. Can't remember the exact podcast I heard it on, but he was saying about how like he takes his like diet, like he cooks his own food, like he's very, very like specific with what he eats. And even just getting a little insight into that, and even hearing him on radio, just ultimate professional, wants to get the best out of himself. And yeah, just mixing that and then the fact the role, I could easily see a 110 average repeating. So Tim, could you, with a guy like Sheasel priced at 112 or whatever, he's obviously very expensive and the most expensive defender. Is there a world where we're struggling to find this value in defenders? Can we start Harry Sheasel at D1, or do you think it's just too much money and he's more an upgrade target when you're looking at defense?
So I think at this stage of the season, he's too much money. And I think there's still enough value options for us to pick in the defensive line. But, we're 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out from the season. We've got to see how all this plays out. I mean, some people, I guess, are looking at people like Sam DeConnick, Ari Schoenmakers, Josh Sin, players like that to kind of fill out their defensive line. There's also, I noticed there's been a bit more of people kind of leaning towards maybe starting some more of those round 3 bye players as well when, we're talking Matty Roberts, Harry Perryman, stuff like that. So, look, at this stage, I'm chasing more for value in the defensive line. But, look, I am, and I haven't really analysed the Sheasel run to start the year, I must admit. But, he is one of those players, if it does all pan out for him, he's one of those players that could potentially take the season away from you at the beginning there. So, look, he's definitely got to be in consideration, but I think there's just way too many value players in front of him for my structure so far anyway. But, like I said, we'll see how things play out.
Yeah. One of his teammates, though, Dylan, in Colin McKirch, has been someone that there's been mixed reports from what I've seen all the preseason. He's playing half back, he's playing wing, he's playing midfield, he's playing forward. What have you seen from his preseason? I know you've attended a few of the trainings along with the intra-club. What have you seen from him, and what do you expect his role to be this season? And do you think it'll be fantasy relevant for us?
So to cut a long story short, I don't personally think it's going to be fantasy relevant. Pretty much the entire match sim the other day, he was playing straight off a half forward flank. So he was coming up to stoppages, of course, and he was getting involved, but he was a player that was used. I think he ended up with 23 disposals at the end of the day, and this is playing against a sort of pretty much a VFL level side. So I think he's going to play that high half forward role. I think you're looking at sort of 15 to 20 touches a game. And he's someone that's going to be, for me, he's going to be someone that's more impact per disposal. He's going to be kicking the ball inside 50. And North are going to really try to utilize him on those when they, pull off like a swift counter attack. That's where they're going to use him. But I don't see it as being anywhere near as prolific as what it was when he had that really sort of juicy halfback role towards the end of last season, where you saw the scoring, really sort of skyrocket. So it's not, I think as a player, he's going to improve, but not someone that's massively on the radar for me as a fantasy option.
Yeah, because it seems that Caleb Daniel has been the one that's taken all that. And I think the question is, how much ball did he get? And did he take all the kick-ins, or at least a lot of them?
He's been taking the kick-ins from not just this match sim, pretty much every sort of match sim that they've done throughout the preseason. He's been straight on kick-ins for the A team. You've had someone like a Zach Fisher who's doing the stuff at the other end, but they just want to get the ball in his hands. He pretty much is that quarterback player for North Melbourne at the moment. And we know what they've done over the last few seasons, how they've liked to play, chipping the ball around the back line. Sheasel, Fisher, McKercher over the last few years have all scored massive back there. And I don't see anything changing here for Daniel. And what's he priced at in fantasy, 50 or something like that?
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah, and as it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah,
yeah,
easy one.
Exactly. Yeah, cool. And then the final one I just want to ask you about was Tristan Cherry. Obviously, a lot of people have got him at the moment. He's well over 55%, and that's probably going to keep climbing, obviously, with Marshall's injury. And we'll talk about it with the Dogs game, but Brayden Crossley was number one ruck. And it would just be the most bevo thing to do, putting Crossley number one ruck and playing English. So who knows what's going to happen there. But with Cherry, what do you think of his game on the weekend? So
I've watched his preseason pretty thoroughly, and I think he's looked enormous over the entire preseason. In this particular match sim, he only played the first half of the game. So then they took him out. They switched Taylor Goad into that sort of number one ruck role. And I think that's probably a conversation that's going to develop over the next couple of seasons about Taylor Goad. And I don't know, could Taylor Goad's emergence actually affect Tristan Cherry this year if Clarko decides that he wants to play like a double ruck? Probably not, but that'd be something to note as well. I think Cherry, though, he looks fit. He looks like he's taking more contested marks around the ground than he was last year. And we know what he did from a sort of defensive point of view in the second half of the year, those stoppages. He likes to get involved in the tackles, follow up from the hit outs, take the ball out of the ruck, all of those sorts of things. So he's definitely an option. For me, it's just whether you want to pay up, in fantasy, do you want to pay up that much for a single player? It's a difficult one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think he's so popular that almost if you don't go him, it could be risky. But if you don't go him, he's got a tougher run to start the season. So he's going to be one of those interesting players that we're going to be keeping an eye on. Just before we move on to the rookies and stuff as well, just a couple of notes in terms of some other happenings here. So GWS had a bit of an intra-club game there as well. Tom Green exited a bit early due to a corked calf. So just something to keep an eye on. Apparently, it's not going to be a big issue, but he did exit with that there. Connor Stone was one of the three main distributors off half-back, and we heard on the track watching podcast with Warney. I'm trying to think who it was that was chatting with him. I think it was Cartoon or Riley Beveridge. One of the two was saying that Connor Stone's looking like he's going to be one of the main distributors there and could be a guy that gets some games early. So something to keep an eye on at 230K. And then Finn Callahan's the other one that could be set for a breakout, playing full-time mid this year. So he apparently looked really good once again. And then Stephen Cornelio, I think we can probably cross him off the list now if anyone was still out there considering him. Still didn't take part in match sim there, and he's still struggling from off-season surgery there as well. So I would be crossing him off there.
The other one, Bales.
Yep.
The other one, James Leake. Have you got him on there?
Yeah, I don't have him on the list here, but he was in the B team, I believe, in the midfield. So just be interesting to see if he plays. The good thing is Giants have opening round, so we get a look at him. So I guess he's going to be mixed.
I've heard a lot of good things about him. I wouldn't be surprised to see him.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Dylan,
what do you think about a James Leake? Obviously, I've heard people say that he's very versatile. He can play in defence, he can play in the midfield and play forward, and that could be something that Kingsley might use to his benefit with a guy like Perryman gone. So do you think he could get some games early?
Yeah, for sure. Like that sort of utility type, someone that could get a game. I don't know what he's priced at though in fantasy.
Basement, yeah, 230K.
Basement, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Then, yeah, if he's in the mix, then just do it.
Yeah, exactly. And as we said, get the free look in opening round anyway. So if he goes well, we get the double price rise, and you can look at bringing him in there. And then just to Melbourne, Clayton Oliver, we just have to lock him in. Simple as that. Apparently, he's looking fantastic. The best preseason since his best and fairest year in 2022. Looks fit. Point to prove. He's just cheap. I think we just lock him in. Harvey Langford and Xavier Lindsay, though, Dylan, I want to get your thoughts on, because those two are apparently really impressive. Langford, they're saying, is almost like another mini Clayton Oliver in the way that he's so big and strong and that powerful midfielder. And then Xavier Lindsay, I know that you jumped on the coaches panel in the preseason and was saying that if Lindsay gets his half-back role, he could be one of the best cash cows, but it looks like he's more on a wing. So sort of the first thoughts on Langford, and then what you think Lindsay can do with his scoring, potentially playing on a wing.
Yeah, so I think with Langford, you sort of hit the nail on the head. He's a Clayton Oliver type. He's sort of probably with the left foot, the classy sort of what he can do from an outside perspective. He's probably a little bit more like someone like a Jordan Dawson. But what he did in the Coates Talent League, the national championships, he's a player that can win the ball like heavily on the inside. He has a really physical presence to him. He's big, he's strong, he's around that 1 meter mark, but he has a forward threat as well. And I think that's probably at this point his angle into the Demons team, because you're still going to be hard pressed to get into that starting Melbourne midfield. You've still got Oliver, you've still got Petrarca, you've still got Viney, you've got Trent Rivers. They're going to be trying to get players like Caleb Windsor, Judd McVie down the track in there. So probably his angle for me at this point, even though, in training and match him at the moment, he's playing in the midfield, his angle would be as maybe like a third tall forward, sort of a, high half forward, someone that comes up to stoppage and tries to impact from there. But he's definitely, I see Melbourne as in a big transition phase at the moment with what they're trying to do in sort of small doses, bringing new players into the team. We saw it with Trent Rivers last year. I think Petrarca probably continues to play that more sort of mid-forward hybrid role with what he can do in front of the ball. And then, Rivers comes into the midfield. You've got Windsor, who's probably going to play off halfback. So they're going to be trying to change things up. And I think that bodes well for both Langford and Lindsay getting spots early in this season.
Yeah. And you touched on the final part I want to touch on from Melbourne as well, was Trent Rivers. Sort of what have you made of his precinct? Because I know that Vam's obviously a friend of the show, was saying that how the third and fourth midfielders can sometimes, especially the fourth midfielder, haven't averaged over 90. So do you think that he can maybe go whether it's more CBAs than a Petrarca or someone else like that? Do you think that he's got the capability to go like a 90+ average and be a worthwhile pick for us in defence?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because I do see him as that sort of, he's got that extra bite of pace, and he's sort of the one that receives the ball out of the stoppage. So I don't necessarily see him as someone that has a massive, massive ceiling. Like you talk about those players that are like that, like a Jason Horne-Francis is another one. And sometimes their ceiling can be tapped a little bit because they're that kind of more high impact player. They need to take more time on the bench to rest. It's sort of, fatiguing on the body and that sort of thing. But I think he's definitely going to get the time in there. Like I said, I think Petrarca goes forward a little bit more, particularly with the injury that he had last year, how kind of hard that was on him. So I think he'll probably start forward. It's going to be, Rivers. It's going to be Viney. It's going to be Oliver for me in there. So he's definitely going to have the opportunity. Whether that type of player, we probably saw towards the back end of last year that he could do it. So I think he's definitely an option. On Lindsay, just who we mentioned, probably something I don't think anyone's really talking about is the recent injury, the long-term sort of hamstring injury to Judd McVie, which I do think at the moment Lindsay's been training more as that sort of wingman, but I do think that kind of opens up another half-back spot. Wins has gone back there, but there's still probably space for someone like a Lindsay to float back into that role.
Yeah, and that would be very fantasy friendly. So I think that would be something that we're looking at as well. I know Petrarca didn't take part in this as well as he works his way back. Tim, is he someone that you just probably... He's obviously still been training, but hasn't really taken part in match sim. Is he someone you'd rather not start and potentially bring in, or is there still scope potentially to start him if he shows something in the community series games?
Once again, I think a bit like what I was talking about before. It's just we got limited spots, right? And when we're considering the options we're going to put in there, it's do you want someone that's had a broken rib in the preseason? For me, that pretty much just puts a line through him. We've got too many other options out there, which have had uninterrupted preseasons. They've got value. He's also the kind of player I'm not a huge fan of as well, because obviously it's got a lot to do with his role, but we can see him score these big scores, but you can see him have a bit of a flaw on him as well. So, I do tend to kind of stay away from players like that, even though, we expected to see him get more midfield time this year. But yeah, like I said, I think just the risks just pile up, when you've got that preseason injury, and that kind of puts him out of contention for me right now.
What's he priced at, Bales?
923k.
Yeah,
so
too much for me.
It's like you get yourself 60, 70k. You've got a Connor Rosie, Tim Taranto, and you go a little bit more. Even a Tom Green who's got an early buy, but we still expect him to be value. So
I've been a bit surprised that there's been much chatter about Petrarca as a starting option. I know he's underpriced, but yeah, just with the injury and yeah. I think he's one that, we'll all be keeping a keen eye on if he does drift forward and there's a bit of DPP later in the year, because that makes him stand out. But at the moment, like Timmy said, amongst the crowd, I don't have much interest in him. Hey, just quickly before we move on from the Ds, Trent Rivers, games where he had 40% CBAs or more, he averaged 91 last year. I reckon there's a bit of meat on the bone, as they say, with him. Yeah.
Well, he's currently sitting in my tent line and currently at D1 as well. So we'll see if that stays the same. Cool. We'll move on to the other practice games where we have two teams playing against one another. So we had the Bulldogs and Essendon there. And Don, I know you were watching a bit of this. I caught the first quarter and a bit of this game. Obviously, a lot of things changed in the second half with some of these match sim games. But what did you take away from this game, considering that the conditions for one in the second quarter obviously got really, really wet, and then also the fact that you had your likes of Bontempelli, Tom Liberatore, Bailey Dale, which I know Joel Frazier had a good game. A few people were keen on him, but Dale wasn't there. Essendon had a few guys out. So what were your sort of main takeaways from that game?
Yeah, probably the most, first of all, just from a match point of view, I was pretty impressed with like Caddy and Kako. They just look so dangerous up in that forward line, but that's more of a general kind of footy perspective. But I was watching Elijah Sardis. I kind of tracked what he was doing last year in the VFL. He's just such a natural ball winner, someone that can find the ball at stoppages, get it on the outside. Yeah, he's pretty penetrative, can kick the ball inside forward 50, and he just looms to me like that kind of natural player that's going to come into that midfield. The big question is what Essendon, again, it's one of those mixed situation things, because they've got a lot of similar types in there, like those smaller type midfielders. Merritt, you'd think he's still going to play a pretty big role. Parrish is around when he comes back from injury. They're kind of all a bit same. And Sardis probably is another one that doesn't, he's an accumulator, but he's not one that sort of has gears to his game. So, Durham comes in, he probably gives him a little bit more bite. Do they go with someone like an Archie Perkins? That's my only question there. But I would say, as long as Elijah Sardis is named in the team, you can't really play him anywhere else. So he's going to be, somewhere between 60, 70% CBAs just based on that. And I'd be, from the way that he finds the football, so naturally, he has done it ever since he's been a junior in under-18 football. He's been finding the football with ease. He did it in the VFL. He can have games with 40 touches. So I'd be locking and loading again if he's named in round one.
Yeah, and again, he plays opening round as well, so we get to look at him. But even still, He seems like the guy that just screams sub and could start sub. I don't know that Essendon fans either want, some fans want him in, some don't, because his kicking has obviously been questionable. But I think he's a guy, if he goes well in opening round and he's 600K, we can have a look at it. But yeah, just that's the one flag on him there as well. One guy that I've been keen on in the preseason, I noticed him a fair bit in this game, was Ben Hobbs. I noticed him get around the ball a lot. His pressure was really good early as well, got a fair bit of the ball. Do you see, obviously Parrish didn't play, Durham didn't play, a few other outs there. Do you see him getting a go in the team early, or do you think that he could be a guy that is this sub or potentially just outside of the best 23?
Well, he's another one for me where it's just kind of like it's same. Like they have, how many guys do they have that are like 180 centimeter midfielders? They're not particularly quick. They accumulate the footy. Hobbs is another one like that. Like if he was getting the time in there, I'd absolutely be all for it because he will rack up the footy, but they can't have every midfielder exactly the same, just these accumulator types. They're going to have someone in there with a little bit more dynamism, or someone that can kind of play a defensive role, has a bit of a bigger body, something like that. So for me, it's all about the mix. So if someone like a Parrish is in there, I'd say Hobbs is probably the first one to go. He might go and sit on like a half forward flank like he has at other times, and he'll still come up to stoppage. He's a natural ball winner, so he'll find the footy, but I don't think you're going to get a massive ceiling from someone like a Hobbs. I'd say that he's behind someone like an Elijah Sardis. So I think probably for him, it's sub or it's VFL probably. That sounds kind of harsh, but
yeah.
The other one, Bales, that I was interested in was the talk about Dylan Shields' halfback role and how real that was. 769K, bit of a checkered past in terms of injury, but by the sounds of it, will get DPP in round 6 and can find the footy. I don't know, Tim, is he someone that has come across your mind at all this preseason? Does the interest
Who's that, mate? Say that again.
Just say Dylan Shield, so mid only, but apparently he's playing off half back, and I think we saw it yesterday.
Look, I haven't really kept him in consideration just because I've been listening to a few of the Essendon supporters who just don't really think he's playing, but he seems, well, I mean, we saw him in the match sim yesterday. So, I mean, I guess if he's got that role, we're going to have to consider him, but yeah, I haven't considered him yet.
Again, one of those guys that...
Yeah, I don't think I will. It was just an interesting thing.
I thought this one looked pretty legit to me. Like this one had shades of a Dane Zorko of last season, you know, someone that you're trying to just like prolong their career a little bit. Like at his best, Dylan Shield is a pretty smooth moving, you know, high end midfielder, someone that has a pretty nice step on him. So he's got a lot of traits that are, you know, good to be able to, he can use the ball off the half back. He's kind of got that burst of speed. So I do think this one sort of checks out. And again, like he's another one given the price. The mid only sucks a little bit, but I think in that role, like he looked pretty, I don't know how many touches he got in the end, but I reckon it would have been north of 25.
Yeah.
And I guess the Ridley, not that Ridley plays the same role exactly, but you know, his injury would be impacting in a good way for Shield, but he'll be back obviously. Then you've got Phillips. Is it Phillips? Yeah, Phillips as well. El Hawley is, you know, waiting in the wings as well. So there's a few that could play that role. But right now, Dylan Shield maybe just for draft, grab him because, yeah, defender status should be coming.
Exactly. And we get to, again, another one we get to look at opening round and see what he scores, and potentially can make a decision on him there as well. Moving over to the Bulldogs side, I think Sanders was pretty good, Dylan, got a fair bit of the ball. So obviously we've got to sort of remember that none of those main mids were there. But from what you saw, did he look like he continued on his pretty good preseason?
Oh, yeah. Like if this guy's like a prototypical fantasy player. Like he's just someone that accumulates the footy with ease, like finds the ball at stoppages, finds it on the outside, can even sort of float forward and kick goals as well. So again, like what you said there, does he get in over Bont, Treloar, Libba? That's probably the big question. And then you got Ed Richards as well. So Ed Richards gives you that a little bit more dynamic. He's got the foot skills on him as well. So I don't know, can you guys see, I think it would have to be Libba that took the hit, given Treloar played such good footy last year. It'd have to be Libba, or it's got to be Bont takes the hit on the CBAs and plays a little bit more forward?
I think they'll look after Sanders. You know, you saw how careful Bevo was last year with the sub, and you know, people have opinions on that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's a first year kid, and you know, you want to get them in the right space. I think to throw him into a pure midfield role in his second year, it just might be a bit soon for it to be a permanent thing and all year. So I reckon there'll be games where he gets heaps of mid-time, and then there'll be games where, yeah, he's a bit more forward and, you know, similar to what we saw last year. So I think the Sanders pick it's viable and it's a really good starting option. Just keep an eye on it, because there'll be times throughout the year where the role's not there, and once you make your cash, you're probably going to want to jump.
Yeah. Final player I want to chat about, because again, Joel Fraser has been someone a few people have spoken about. No Bailey Dale. Still don't really know why, if that was just being managed. I know he was running laps at the last training session, so we'll just have to see. But I don't think we can take too much from that just yet. Which maybe some name to put the star next to in the app. But Tim English obviously wasn't the number one ruck yesterday. Braden Crossley obviously is there, and it seems like I don't know if he has officially been signed, but it sounds like he will be from what they're saying. Is there any risk that you think Bevo could just throw another spanner and play Braden Crossley as number one ruck and play Tim English forward with Jamara out? Or is English someone you've been considering? Because I know we've chatted about rucks, and it's a tricky one, particularly that R2 spot.
Was that to me?
Yes, yeah.
Sorry, yeah. I wasn't sure if you started on the Tim English, and you're asking Dylan, or whether you were coming to me.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
Oh, bloody hell, rucks, man! You're really gonna. I mean, this is what's turned into probably being the toughest line at the moment. I mean, Tim English was up there in consideration for me, but oh man, I'm really at sea with this. I think the way that I'm leaning at the moment with the rucks is I still have confidence that Carlton are not going to play Mark Bednett as much as what we think. Well, I mean, I guess we don't know. We haven't really heard anything. I mean, we've heard Pitt talk about, you know, playing the second ruck and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I struggle to see them doing that as a side. So I'm still kind of hanging on to Tom de Koning as an option. And the other one that even with the round 2 bye, the other one, and I mean, even with his interrupted preseason, Kieran Briggs is the other one that I really like the look of there at the moment. I'm just, yeah, look, I must admit, I didn't pay too much attention to Tim English yesterday. And I have no idea what Bevo's going to do in there. I mean, I don't even know if Bevo knows what he's going to do in there either, right? So I don't know. What do you reckon, Bales?
Yeah, I think it'd just be the most Bevo thing to do, to pick up Braden Crossley off of the SSP and play him as number one ruck with Jamara being out. We don't know when Jamara is going to be back. So they've got Norton there, but do they play English and if it's a Crossley resting forward at times? I don't know. I still think English should be number one ruck. I don't think. I'm just saying it would be the most Bevo thing to do. To play in there. So that's, yeah.
I reckon the thing that we're worried about, right, is that with that coming into play now, like previously I thought that Tim English might have some value in him, like might have a few points of upside in him. But when that comes into it now, it's like, well, it just seems like the risk of that upside being there just disappears. So look, I mean, quite potentially he'll hold his price, but that's not what I'm looking for in the rucks. I'm looking to make some money. So, that's kind of why he's at the moment out of consideration for me.
I'm a little bit worried about Tim English's career sort of overall at the moment. I just thought with some of the changes to the ruck rule last year, it just seemed like he wasn't able to use his kind of biggest traits, which is sort of his athleticism, his run, and those sorts of parts of the game. He just seems to, I don't know, he seems to sort of lack physicality now when he's up against those rucks, like someone like a Tristan Sherry, a Brody Grundy, those ones that really like to wrestle. They sort of seem to thrive under the kind of new rules, and I'm just kind of not sure where he lies. So I actually could see the Crossley looks like, in some ways, he looks a little bit more like some of the ruckmen that are actually starting to come through, those sort of a bit heavier set. They like that body contact, and I've seen crazier things from Bevo for sure.
I think the other thing with English is he didn't really have a preseason last year. Well, he did, sorry, but it was interrupted. And yeah, I don't know. I reckon we could have this this concern around nearly every single ruck option. That's why it's so tricky, as Tim said.
We do. That's the problem.
I just
We
think
got
with
concerns
English,
around all of them.
yeah, I don't know. I think there's enough question marks if this Crossley fella arrives to then say, I won't start English. But if he doesn't, I still see value in English for sure.
Yep, definitely something to be keeping an eye on as well. We'll move over to the.
What about Hugo Garcia Bales?
Do you mean Riley Garcia?
No, Hugo.
Hugo
sorry, hang
Garcia.
on. Wrong game. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right. There was another Garcia playing. Riley Garcia been getting some raps, but I'm still not exactly sure what role he's going to play. So he'll be one that we have to watch. But we will talk about the Freo Indigenous All-Star game, which obviously I think they should bring it back. I think that was fantastic last night and would be really good to see it back next year. So I think we'll start with Freo because it's going to be hard to take a lot of learnings from the Indigenous All-Stars, except for the fact that some of them look bloody good. And that team, if they were an actual AFL team, would cause a lot of issues, I think, with all the star power that they've got. So just Caleb Sarong, Andrew Brayshaw did what they need to do. I think that they're, again, and I know JD put out a tweet just before we went live as well about this, saying that with premiums, don't look at what they're scoring, look at the role, how they're looking. They never really get out of second gear anyway. Like Sarong was very, very good early, and Brayshaw never looked like he got out of first gear. So if you're keen on either of those guys, I'd still be having them up there as well. Tim, with the fact that there's, I think Ryan Daniels said that Sean Darcy went back before round 3 to 5 at the earliest. Does this pave the way for a Liam Reedy to potentially be an option at R2 or even R3 if you pay up for him on the bench? Because it seems like Jackson, they want to keep him as this forward that can go to some CBAs as a mid and then also pinch hit in the ruck. Is Reedy someone that you may sort of bring into calculations in the ruck, or do you think that you're still a bit nervous with it that Freo could change?
Yeah, look, I think. Look, the biggest problem I see with Reedy is where do you go if it doesn't work? So that's, once again, like in terms of a starting squad and exposing yourself early on in the year, like he's really down the list for me. Luke Jackson may have been in consideration. I mean, what is he? I think he's starting 10 points or 5 points cheaper than he was last year. I mean, I got on him last year, as I know a number of different coaches did, thinking that, he with Darcy out, he'd get the majority of the ruck time, but he really did struggle to score there. So yeah, look, I don't really like any of those options in the ruck for Fremantle at the moment. But once again, like, I'm just mindful of, like, we got 3 weeks to go. We got a lot of practice matches. We got a lot of things to play out. And as we really kind of see these starting squads come together and how the coaches are going to approach the beginning of the season, a lot's going to change over these next 3 weeks, right? So, and it's one of the things I'm really trying to do this year as compared to last year, is getting a bit stuck in my mind about players and then being a little bit inflexible as we got close. And particularly being that we've got this opening round where, normally you don't have an opening round that just throws a complete spanner into the works and completely disrupt your team. And I was probably guilty of that last year, as being a little bit too maybe reactionary to opening round. So, I'm just trying to hold my horses a little bit. I'm trying to keep my spreadsheets. I'm trying to keep, who are the players that I think are going to offer the most amount of value with the least amount of risk. I am, and I know DT Lemon, I think, brought it up with Holmesy the other week as well. Like I really did take something away from the pod that he did with I can't remember the guy's name. Dolminator, right? Who'd finished very, very well for a number of years now, and it was about not having a vanilla team, but how you can really can minimize the risk that you've got in a starting team by having, I guess, more highly owned players. So, I'm trying not to be too different. I'm trying not to be too unique. Of course, if I don't believe in a player, if I don't believe there's value or the performance there, then I'm not going to go with the crowd no matter what. But yeah, I'm trying not to be too unique, stay a little bit vanilla, and not get too stuck in my thinking about how the way things are going to go.
Yeah, I think Reedy's someone that we can look at R3, I reckon. I think the R2 thing is still probably a bit risky for me. I reckon he's a R3 that we might be able to pay up for if Harry Boyd or even a Braden Crossley don't play early. So someone to keep an eye on. Dylan, obviously, Neil Rasmus has been someone that a few coaches have been looking at. Played okay last night. Got a few touches. Obviously, a bit more opportunity there, being obviously a practice game. Do you see him with obviously Young's been injured? Does he get eased in? Does he play a bit more forward? Do you see a guy like Erasmus getting some games early, or do you think he's still just on the periphery looking in?
Honestly, I don't think so. Just because you've got players like Caleb Sarong, Andy Brayshaw, who just take up so much mid clock in there. He's another one. Like, he has a little bit of extra height in there to sort of change the mix a little bit compared to a Sarong or a Brayshaw, but he doesn't really offer that sort of pace, that zip. So I see if someone like Hayden Young's missing, they're probably going to try to get Shea Bolton in there to kind of be that, really attacking midfielder. So I don't know. Like, yeah, if there was an injury to a Sarong or a Brayshaw, going to run an Erasmus or a Johnson, someone that they've drafted recently, to try and get some minutes into them. But I don't see them trying to shoehorn an Erasmus just into the team for the sake of it, to be honest.
No.
They had the best.
He needs to sort of lock down like a half forward role. Like, he needs to just become really good at that, because his future in the short term isn't in the guts. He's only 21, and Freo would, they're going to want to keep him. I think he's a real talent. So he's just got to bide his time. Him and Johnson, I think they'll be able to go into the guts maybe down the track.
Yeah, agree with that.
Well, fantasy's back as well. I was watching that the last night, and obviously I've currently got Brayshaw in my team, and there was a bit where Matt Johnson had the ball, and he had an easy handball to Brayshaw, and Brayshaw probably would have run in and kicked a goal, and he kicked it, and it got smothered. And I was sitting there going like, "You idiot, pass to Brayshaw." Then I had this reasoning. I'm going, "Hang on, no fancy points on the line today. The season hasn't started." But you just know, it shouldn't surprise anyone that I'm like that. But it just, I sort of getting excited for the season starting.
That's full nuffy.
Yeah, exactly. Full nuffy. That's that's definitely me. That's for sure.
This pod, we considered changing the name to Footy Fantasy Nuffy. Nuffies are us.
Yeah, exactly. We'll touch on Indigenous All-Stars, Jordox, as well, obviously, because we can take some.
Actually, before you do, we're going to talk about O'Driscoll, surely. He is everyone's lips. Yeah.
Yeah. Tim was chatting about before, obviously, saying that can we fit these guys in to fit them in? We got all the rookies. We got like the Peatlings, the Hollands, and maybe coming. Can we fit a guy like O'Driscoll?
It'd be if you had a guy that was in that 600 range, like a Sardis or a Peatling, and you wanted to make some cash, because O'Driscoll's 441. You could then put that 100 elsewhere. But I don't know. I'd heard good things about him. I don't know a lot about him, because he was a pretty handy cash cow maybe a couple of years ago from memory. Yeah. I don't know where he's been, if he's been playing
injured or last year.
Injured.
Yeah.
Well, he looked good last night. I don't know what role he was. Was he wing? I'm not sure, but
on the wing.
He's very cheap.
Yeah, he's on the wing. He was everywhere, and I know Mitty Monk was saying about how we need to start really considering O'Driscoll. So he's definitely someone we've got to watch. It's just tough. If he had defender status, he'd be one of the most selected players now, because we're looking for Valley defenders. But with this, just the mid, obviously playing on a wing, it's tough to fit him in. So I'm not quite sure how we fit him in. But if he keeps forming like this, we might have to find a way. Maybe someone that we don't start and we downgrade or upgrade a rookie to after round 1 or 2 if he continues this. But we know wingers can be very up and down. But at Optus, we know that these wingers, like a Sharp last year, can score really well if given the opportunity. But yeah, Jordox, with the Indigenous All-Stars, I think the 3 players that caught my eye, and I think we can really take the learnings from how they looked, because we can't really look at positions too much. But the 3 players for me that stood out: Jai Simpkin, Jason Horne-Francis, and Isaac Rankin. And Rankin wasn't, I guess, his brilliant best that we've seen for Adelaide, but he looked fit, he looked good in the midfield. Jai Simpkin was playing a mix of this mid-forward role and was best on ground last night, played fantastic. It's great to see him when he kicked that goal as well. He looked fantastic. And then Jason Horne-Francis as well, taking a lot of +6s, kicked 3 goals, looked great. What did you take from those 3 guys? And obviously all forwards, any of them moved up in your rankings for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard with a side like that where they're all, it's so different to what they're going to be like in round 1 in terms of the team they're playing in. I think with Horne-Francis, it was just, if you were keen on him, it's just what you needed for a little bit of vindication early. He's going to be big this year. Simpkin, it's a shame Jaiden's not in, because he would have loved last night's effort from Simpkin. I don't think there's any surprises there. Simpkin did that in games last year. There was a game, I think, where they beat West Coast.
Yeah,
and then I think the final round, fantasy grand final week, there will have been a lot of people that traded him out, and we've been pulling their hair out. So I think we know Simpkin's got that sort of game in him. It's just whether it's consistent enough. And Rankin, I thought he was a bit quiet. I didn't think he did anything that would make those who weren't into him look at him. But I wouldn't be ruling out or ruling in anyone based on the All-Stars game, just because of the team they were playing in.
Yeah, exactly. Tim, was there any sort of takeaways from you from any of the players in the Indigenous All-Stars that sort of caught your eye, that looked good, maybe considering them a little bit more in your team? Or do you think, as Jordox said, it's a bit harder to do that with, obviously they're all from different clubs and playing the one team?
No, look, I was pretty hot on Jason Horn. Well, I don't know, pretty hot, but he was certainly a player in consideration for me. But I think the more the preseason goes on, the more I kind of I'm leaning towards fading him. Once again with Simpkin, spots in that forward line are just going to be real primo, right? We've got, certainly 3 locked away. Sanders
probably
right
4.
up. Yeah, and I mentioned Hugo Garcia before. There's a bunch of players that are going to be considered in that forward line. A bunch of West Coast Eagles players that are going to be considered in that forward line. So I think spots are just pretty valuable there. But no one else. Once again, it was to see the talent on the field. Some of those goals, they're just incredible goals. But some of those players are just doing them with ease. It was great to watch.
Yeah, exactly. No, very, very good. As I said, hopefully it's back next year as well. Before we get on to the rookie watch list, and then we'll answer a couple of questions before we finish up here. Tim, obviously we mentioned it last week. Something for the listeners extra, not only with Infinite Wealth, but also a bit of a side thing as well, maybe.
Yeah, well, look, it's been 3 years now that Infinite Wealth's been sponsoring the Content Creators Cup, and we really wanted to do something different, really shake it up for this year. So what we're doing is we're giving firstly, I've recorded a brand new online program for people about mastering your money. Look, a 5-step program, get the facts, balance your budgets, destroy your debt, supercharge your super, and increase your income. But for every coach that registers for that between now and March 10, we'll actually go in the draw for an opportunity to be the 20th coach in the Content Creators Cup. So you get a chance to go up against your 19 favorite content creators and show your wares and see which one of it or how many of us you can beat, and have a bit of fun there. So look, definitely head across to infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy to register for the Master Your Money program. And like I said, if you register before March 10, you'll go in the chance to be in the Content Creators Cup.
Yep, looking forward to it. It'd be interesting to see who that coach is. Looking forward to it starting. Obviously, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be releasing who is in the Content Creators Cup this year, and really looking forward.
We can probably say already we've got Luke and Mitch. They're already we can definitely say that they're competing this year in the Content Creators Cup.
Someone's got to beat them. Someone knock them off their perch. Mitch's head is getting bigger. Luke is. If Luke goes back to back this year, his head's going to be enormous as well. We can't have that, Tim.
It's a great opportunity. The great opportunity for someone to jump in and join, and be in the running to come second to me in the granny, because I'll be in it this year, of course. So great initiative, and get around it. It's going to be fun.
And that's why we got Jordox and Jaiden to help us. We've expanded the AFL Fantasy Fanatics crew, so hopefully with the 4 of us, one of us can take it out and we can be holding up the cup, because we've come so close.
Yeah, so that's infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Cool. And we'll move on to the rookie watch list as we're about to wrap up the podcast. But obviously we got Dylan, who is the draft expert and guru for all these rookies and stuff. We'll go line by line in terms of your favourites there, Dylan. But we've obviously written some in the notes here. So just for listeners, obviously there's a few names that we're looking at. It's like a guy that's a little bit more expensive than a rookie. Jackson Pryor has been someone, and he was okay. Yes, they got a little bit of the ball. The conditions probably didn't quite suit, but I noticed him a little bit early. Obviously, Toby Travalia, Bo Allen, Luke Train has been impressing for Richmond, Zach Reed and Sardell Hawley as well. James Leake, Caleb Smith, Jed Buslinger, and then Josh Gibkiss, I thought I'd just include, just because if anyone still got him, he'll be missing the start of the season as he's had, I think, a little bit of a setback from his ACL injury. So he won't be starting. So, Dylan, I guess give us maybe your top sort of 3 to 5 favourites in defence and who you think we should be really putting up high in our watch list ahead of these the rest of these practice games getting underway over the next fortnight.
Yeah, I definitely think Toby Travaglia is the biggest one there. Whether he plays a genuine sort of halfback distributor role or whether it's more up on the wing, he's just an unbelievable runner. He won the 2K time trial at the combine. He just gets around. He'll be getting heaps of +6s, creating overloads on the wing. So definitely get him in, and he's definitely going to be, pushing for that St Kilda lineup at the start of the year. So I think he'd be the best and the outright one that would be in most people's teams probably at this stage. I'd say a little bit of a smoky, and that's probably because of the way that this guy's seen. But Luke Traynor is definitely one. And you mentioned the injury there to Josh Gibcus, but I think Luke Traynor could come in and play one of those sort of hybridy key position / distributor roles. He is a bit of a Swiss Army knife back there. Like really good user of the ball, can intercept the ball, and he can play on bigger bodied opponents. So I think he's really one to watch. Kind of, if you think about a player that plays now, think about someone like a Jordan Ridley. That's kind of what Traynor is and could be for Richmond. And I think at this point, given that he's quite skinny, they'd probably use him in a distributor role as opposed to a key position defensive role. And probably back there at the moment, the other one that I'd bring up would be Sardell Howie. Just probably the closest to actually getting a game. And it's probably the line, as far as rookies go, the line that we are going to struggle to get actual starters. Challenging him, I'd probably say someone like a Bo Allen. I think he's going to get games at the beginning of the season. I don't think he's going to score particularly well. If he gets, more of a distributor role and less of a lockdown role, that's obviously going to help him. But he's not someone that has big junior numbers and that sort of scoring pedigree, particularly from a fantasy point of view. It's more that sort of impact per possession type player.
Do you think Zach Reid can score well? Obviously, with Ridley out, does he maybe take that? Do you think he can? Apparently, there's been talk that he might take some kick-ins as well, that they like his kick. Do you think that he can score well enough for us, or do you think that he'll just be almost that prototypical D8 that we all have that might score the odd 50, but he's probably just going to score a lot of these 30s and 40s?
I think so. I think it'd be... I'd be trying to limit the amount of rookies that you actually fielded in this position. You'd probably play somebody like a Travaglia, maybe a Traynor if the role looked good in some of these match sim games, but I wouldn't be keen to start someone like a Zach Reid. Maybe have him at D8. Maybe that's even a bit of a waste of a bench spot if you can't even score over 50. But he was the one in that game against the Western Bulldogs. He was the one that was playing on Sam Darcy. So he's kind of, they're trying to kind of groom him into that player that takes the big-bodied key forward, and that doesn't really bode well for scoring. I think there's plenty of other guys back there that can take kick-ins as well. You've got Mason Redmond, who was taking them mostly at the weekend.
Andy McGrath.
You've also got, Andy McGrath, Dylan Shield, plenty of guys, even Ridley himself. So wouldn't be super keen myself.
Yeah. Hey, Dylan, quick one, just a real short, sharp answer. But Ben Jepson, I'm always interested when mature age guys get picked up, particularly, I think he was a SP.
He played in the premiership with I think he played with the premiership with like Rowell and Anderson and Dacos and that.
Yep.
Yeah. Is he a chance to get games early?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, all of these guys that we're probably going to need more match sim, to be honest. We're going to need a couple of preseason games just to see how it looks. I don't know, like they're looking pretty strong too, aren't they? He's the one that's gone to Gold Coast, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're sort of looking pretty strong across most lines. I mean, they've got a lot of talent in there. So hard to say. I think we just need a little bit more data on him.
Yeah, I think I agree as well. Moving to the midfield, obviously this is where a lot of the main crop of these midfield rookies have come from this year. Like you've got so many names, like a Sam Lawler. We talked about Finn O'Sullivan before. Obviously, Jagger Smith it looks like all but locked for round one. Sid Draper, Levi Ashcroft, Harvey Langford, Josh Smiley. Then you've also got like a Leonardo Lombard there as well, and then Xavier Lindsay and even a Clay Hall for a bit cheaper. Where would be your top sort of? Because I guess a lot of coaches are looking, do you play 2 rookies or 3 rookies? I think 4 is less likely just with the amount of value that we've got. So coaches are trying to think, who do we fit in? Like, because there's so many names here that could play. So who would be your favourites, I guess, favourite 2 or 3 to put on field? And then who would you sort of round out the rest on your bench?
Yeah, it's so positionally dependent. Like what opportunity these guys get to come in. If there's half-back roles available for someone like a Xavier Lindsay and Finn O'Sullivan, I've probably got those two at 1 and 2. Like I still have hope that with Judd McVee, particularly with the hamstring injury, I think Xavier Lindsay. I remember back to draft night and the Melbourne recruiters talking about drafting Xavier Lindsay. They said the first 2-3 years he'll be playing a halfback type role. Finn O'Sullivan, I think he's lining up at this point more on a wing, but we've seen what Clarko's done. Like, do you remember that preseason with Sheezel? And Sheezel was playing as that small forward role the entire preseason, and then he finally put him into the halfback role. He did similar with McKercher, sort of started him on a wing. I could see similar with Finn O'Sullivan. They certainly want to play him in a more kind of bruise-free role, particularly in his first couple of years. And they definitely want to get the ball in his hand, and he looks AFL ready as far as how he's training. So I'd have Finn O'Sullivan. I'd have Xavier Lindsay at the top of the pool. The other one I'd probably have as far as the one that's going to get the biggest role is someone like a Josh Smiley. I know he's done an injury, so we're going to have to see how he comes back from that. But he's got the opportunity just to step into that Richmond midfield because they just don't have a lot of bodies in there. Whereas I look at players like Jagger Smith, like Levi Ashcroft, who completely dominated, finding the footy at under 18 level. I don't know how much of a role they're going to get in their teams. Like, does Levi Ashcroft break into that Brisbane team? It's going to be difficult. If he does, it's probably on a wing for someone like a Jasper Fletcher, somebody like that. Jagger Smith is an interesting one because from all reports from Carlton fans, he's absolutely tearing it up. And he's probably one of the best loose ball players that I've ever seen from an under 18 level. He just finds the football from stoppages so easily. That's going to be another conversation around what Carlton do with their ruck and their midfield group. Like, does Tom De Koning do the outright number one rucking, or is it Pittonet? Because Pittonet sort of improves their stoppage game, whereas Tom De Koning gives them more in transition. It's going to be tough, though. You've got that Carlton midfield. It's still really strong. So I'd put those guys back a little bit. And Sam Lawler, I see him as more of an impact forward at this stage of his career, but probably someone that has, as a footballer, the higher upside.
Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of good names there as well. Like we didn't even mention like your Harvey Langfords and Sid Drapers as well. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of roles they get at their teams as well.
Yeah, and Sid Draper, you just mentioned Sid Draper. I sort of forgot about him in that opening part, but he's probably someone that I could see getting, a more prominent role than someone like a Levi Ashcroft, for example, with just how, Adelaide's sort of distribution of players. So I could see him doing really well. If Harvey Langford's sort of getting a sniff in there as well, he's a chance. But yeah, for me, if I was to rank them, I'd go O'Sullivan, Lindsay, Smiley, maybe with Jagger Smith at 4.
Yep. And funny enough that it seems that Finn O'Sullivan is obviously one of the ones that's not sort of quite getting enough buzz, and obviously Lindsay as well. So it'll be interesting to see if they get those roles, and definitely someone I think we've got to be moving up our rookie rankings. Obviously, rucks, we don't know who's going to play. Archer Reed's there. Harry Boyd, do they play? Obviously, Crossley as well. So we'll just have to see who plays. But in the forward line, Zane Dersman's obviously a little bit more expensive than the rookies, but he's there as well. You've got obviously Elijah Hewitt's been dominating in preseason from what we've been hearing. Reef McInnes is playing at halfback. Isaac Kako, Dan Curtin, Joe Berry, Max Hall looking good as well, along with Sam Davidson, Connor Stone, and then maybe Cooper Simpson as he get a go at Freo. Who would be your favourites there? But firstly, before you get into the three, what are your thoughts with a Kako? Can he score well enough, do you think, for us to pick him at 300K, or do you think there are better options?
That's so difficult. Like, you saw anyone that watched the game yesterday, you can kind of see what sort of player he is, right? Like, it's really dynamic. That little run that he did through at the stoppage, got the ball out and then kicked the goal. Like, that was absolutely enormous. But then he probably goes the next 5 to 10 minutes without touching the footy. And I think you're going to get that with him. Like, I don't see an enormous amount of value. If you start him, you're going to have to, if you bring him into the team, it's going to have to be from a bench position. I don't think you could start him on the field. And I think you'd be mainly doing it just out of the fear that Brad Scott kind of deploys him somewhere else in a position where he can get him a little bit more of the ball. But yeah, I don't know. I think you could probably fade him, particularly with all of the value that's in the forward lines, like you've talked with the mid prices. As far as who I'd be ranking right up the top of my list, number one for me would be Joe Berry. Again, I haven't seen his work in the Port Adelaide like preseason. We haven't seen any of the games yet, but all reports he's absolutely killing it. And he's he's more of an endurance player than what Kako is as a small forward. He's more of the guy that gets up to stoppage, pushes up the ground. He can play a little bit of wing, a bit of that half forward position, where Kako is more of that deep lying goal sneak type forward. So Berry's definitely the one you'd be looking at. I liked what I saw from Sam Davidson. And I watched a bit of his stuff in the VFL last year. Like, he's a guy that gets involved in the play, comes up to stoppage. Just, he's going to have a bit more of a better role. And he's someone that, you know, Bevo can rely on as he's sort of a mature age, or around 26 years of age, I think. So I'd have him right up there. The other one you mentioned there, like Elijah Hewitt, I like him. And he's someone that's definitely going to play for the West Coast Eagles, and someone that's probably going to play in that starting centre bounce. So I do like him. Dersma, I watched him in the match team. He played pretty well, but he was playing for the B team. Keep it in mind. So it doesn't look like at this point he's even considered. And I think North Melbourne have, like we talked about, they've got so many guys running through the midfield at the moment. They've got a lot of those sort of medium type forwards as well. So I just don't know where he fits at the moment, even though he was such a high draft pick. So I wouldn't be massively keen on starting him. So it's probably, you know, looking at the names, it's probably Berry, it's Sam Davidson, it's Elijah Hewitt. Just a sneaky one who played in the game yesterday. I'd be just having a look at someone like a Josh Dolan. He came on in the second half for the Western Bulldogs. They don't really have that specialist high half forward position, someone with, you know, elite endurance. They've got the Waitman types. They've got a West. They probably haven't had an elite player that can sort of cover the ground similar to someone like a Dylan Moore from Hawthorn. And Josh Dolan has the assets to be able to do that, I think. So keep an eye on him, but not someone I'd have in that kind of top bracket.
Yeah, beautiful. No, I love it. I love those rankings and Dolan's definitely someone I'm going to be putting on my watch list now, just to see if he gets a game for the Western Bulldogs. Just before we finish up, we've got just two questions here that I thought we'd just quickly chat about here. So Sean had this question here, Tim. So he said, what are we expecting O'Driscoll to average to be a good pick? Seems like our mid-rookies will be going around at 70, 75, so you'd want a little bit more than that. So what would you be wanting from an O'Driscoll if you were to pick him in your side?
All right, let's just have a look here, right? So he's priced at 43. In the midfield, look, wingers, you'd normally kind of see about a 75. Now, I think he's got some higher scoring potential than a 75, and I'm going back to, not really accounting for last year, but that rookie year, the year before, when he did get his hands on the ball, he was able to do some pretty high scoring. So, once again, though, when you're priced at 441 at 43, you got to compare yourself to the rookies and what they're going to be doing, just because you're going to be saving 100K. Look, I do think a lot of midfielders are looking at having something like a James Peatling in. If Peatling doesn't work out, you could probably pivot down to someone like an O'Driscoll, but I don't think he's got enough upside in him for a starting side. Not just yet, anyway. But look, I think you'd want to. I guess if you were getting 85 out of him, you'd be happy with that. But I'm just, with that wing role, I just don't know that you're going to see anything like consistently from him.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I think DC chats about it as well. It's a bit of that no man's land almost, that price that he's sort of close enough where you can just go down a rookie. They're probably going to give you a similar-ish scoring, maybe a little bit less, but you can use that cash elsewhere. But then he's probably not in that sort of the Peatling or even a Hollands, who've probably got that 90+ upside if everything goes their way, that they could really sort of go well. So
I will say, though, that I think JL's been looking to have O'Driscoll and Sharp really take control of those wings. So, I do think they've got a role for him there. Yeah, it's just going to be hard with so many injury, like an interrupted season from last year, to kind of anticipate what his scoring is going to be like.
Yeah, exactly. We just got a massive super chat from Tyler Jones. So thank you very much, Tyler. But he said, "I'm not winning this year. Good luck, though." Hopefully, you're sort of a bit more positive than that. Maybe that SIGNUP even started yet, and you're saying that. So, but no, appreciate the good luck from there. But mate, hopefully you can go well this year. But we very much appreciate the super chat, mate. It's very much appreciated. It's a massive one there. So thank you for that. We also had another one from Tim Ashworth before the show started, saying Simpkin or Parker or Jack Graham. So which two would you go, Jordox, if you had to pick two of those three? Simpkin, Parker, or Graham? Or how would you rank them? Give it a rank.
I reckon just purely if you'd taken two of them, I wouldn't be grabbing the two North boys. I'd want to diversify a little bit. So I reckon I'd go Simpkin and Graham at this point, because I can trust Simpkin to score even without the brilliant midfield minutes. I'm not sure I can trust Parker to score as well unless he's getting the midfield minutes, which I think he'll get. But yeah, I just think Simpkin over him, and then I'd chuck Jack Graham in. I've been hot and cold on Graham this preseason. I was hot, then I did a deep dive on him for our forwards episode, and I was off him. But everything I'm hearing is he's going to be playing mid, so I'm back on him.
Yeah. Well, what were your quick thoughts, Dylan, on Luke Parker? Obviously, he was one we didn't touch on in the North game, and with Wardlaw out, he's maybe someone that gets a little bit more mid-time.
Yeah, it's that tricky conversation again, I think, with the forwards, just because there is so much value there. But he was definitely someone that was playing. I reckon he's going to be that like 50-50 split between midfield and forward. And that's probably like in this, we've kind of had this overarching discussion on Simpkin. I just don't really know where Simpkin fits in if it's not a high half forward role. But Parker, he's just doing the same kind of thing that he was at Sydney. Like, he's a little bit of an enforcer in there for North. So I think Clarko's going to like deploying him at times at stoppages. He has a physical presence. If you think about that, like I said, with that North Melbourne midfield mix, they don't have a lot of guys in there that are doing the defensive stuff. So Parker can sort of play on some of the opposition's best players. He can float forward. He sort of just gets in the opposition's faces, kicks goals, that sort of thing. So 50-50 split for me, and probably maybe the death of Simpkin too.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. I think North and their midfield mix to end the season. Final question was from Jezza Menzel in our Facebook group. So if anyone wants to join the AFL Fantasy Fanatics Facebook group, I'm pretty sure I'll put a link in the description, but if I haven't, I will. But yeah, just search up AFL Fantasy Fanatics and join. 3 questions to answer. It's pretty easy. Just put some answers in and you'll be accepted into the group. So make sure you do that. But he said, value hats aside, who's going to be top 2 in each line at the end of the year? So we'll do rapid fire for this one. So we'll do defenders first. So Tim, top 2 defenders. You have to pick 2.
I think Harry Sheehan's going to be up there. Yeah, I'm not really sure, mate. Look, maybe a Sinclair.
Yeah, yep, I could see that.
Yeah.
Jordox, your top 2?
Let's go the oldies, Whitfield and Zorko.
Ooh, right, no, she's all interesting. Dylan, who would you go top 2 fantasy defenders if you had to pick 2?
I'm gonna go Sheezel, and then I'm gonna go rogue and say DPP Dylan Shield.
Yeah, right.
Oh, the Zorko of 2025, eh?
Yeah. I'm going to go boring and go Sheezel and Whitfield, but the smoky I'm going to say I could see Jaiden Short going like 100, 105. I'm pretty bullish on what he could do, so I think he could go quite big. So, and I think he'll get a lot of ball back there for Richmond. But hey, we'll see how it goes. Midfielders, Tim, who if you had to pick 2, who would you go?
Come to me first. And so I'm not a draft guy either, right? Midfielders. Look, I think Bond could actually have a pretty good year, but I think Nick Dacos has got to be number 1.
Yeah, right. Number 2?
Well, Bond. So that's what I'm saying is the 2. Nick Dacos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Jordox?
We got the delay going on again with
Jordox.
Jordox.
Internet's no good, fellas.
I think so. Well, Dylan, we'll go to you first. Your top 2 midfielders.
Yeah, this is tricky. I think Dacos for me. He'll be 1. And if the role is there, I'm going to go Will Ashcroft.
Oof.
Wow, spicy.
I like the Smokies.
Yep. If I had to pick 2, I'm going. I'm ships in with Jordan Dawson. Whether he'll be number 1, I'm not sure, but I think Jordan Dawson will be 1, and I'm going to go Andrew Brayshaw as well. I think he's in for a big year, so I'll go those 2 as well, just for some different names. I think we're there. Rucks, it's a bit, we probably don't even know ourselves. Probably Cherry and Marshall or Gorn or whoever. So we'll just go to forwards to finish off. So Tim, we're going first to you again. Top 2 forwards.
Look, I think Jack McRae could be right up there, and then probably the Hornbag will go number 2.
Yep. Jordox. I don't know if Jordox will be is delayed or not. I'll go Dylan first and then Jordox.
I'll go pretty vanilla here, but JHF and Bailey Smith.
Yep. Jordox, have we got you?
Yep.
Here we go.
I reckon Bailey Smith, and let's go. No, I don't think you've got me. Have you got me?
Yeah, we got you.
No.
The wonders of the internet.
He's stopping. George like, no, giving up. And then for me, I'll go Jack McRae and I think Bailey Smith. I think they'll be the two. But yeah, Horn Francis really impressed me last night, so he could definitely be one that could be right up there. Cool. That'll end us for a bit of a longer pod, but a really good one. We've got footy back, chatting some sort of rookies, but also as before we sort of do the outros and that, but obviously this podcast for the season as well is brought to you by Game Day Squad as well. So another fantasy platform. So make sure you guys get around them over there. Playing opening round, playing in finals. If you want another fantasy platform like myself that is obsessed with AFL fantasy, make sure you go over to Game Day Squad. Use my code BAILSDT at sign up and you get 3 free packs straight up worth over $20. You get it for free just by using the code at BAILSDT. Well, not at BAILSDT, just BAILSDT. I'm so used to saying that with my Twitter handle. But yeah, just use code BAILSDT and you get yourself some free packs. And yeah, get involved because I'll certainly be playing it this year. So yeah, looking forward to that. But boys, that'll do us for the podcast. But first of all, we'll start off with Dylan, mate. Thank you very much for jumping on the pod and giving us some really, really good insights for these rookies and also some really good insights for the North Intra-Club game and the other games as well. Firstly, where can the people find you across the socials? And where can people find the YouTube channel? What can they be expecting from you for the rest of preseason, then going into the season proper?
Yeah, so you can find me at Dylan Alexander Follows Draft on YouTube. That's sort of my primary stuff. The exact same handle on Instagram, where I'll be posting kind of snippets and little bits of information there. But kind of this season going to be kind of heading more into general AFL content. So a little bit of AFL stuff, but just sort of how the draft and regular AFL kind of interact with each other. So trying to show all of the under 18 players, but also with how they're going to fit into AFL clubs come, the following season as well.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. No, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I'm sure we'll get you back on throughout the season as well. So thank you very much for jumping on. Jordox, mate, thank you for jumping on. Internet's been in and out at sometimes, but it's been all good, mate. Where can the people find you across the socials? And also want to give the Finders Keepers a bit of a plug as well.
Absolutely. I'll be giving Optus a call tomorrow morning. You can find me on X at Jordox2020. And yeah, Finders Keepers, 3rd episode is out tomorrow, and it's all about rucks. So I'm ranking the likely to be available rucks in your redrafts, but also doing a deep dive on all the rucks, all the 18 clubs and their current ruck departments and who's maybe next in line for down the track.
Yep, beautiful. Make sure you guys go and give that a listen. Tim, mate, thanks very much for jumping on. Once again, where can the people find you? And then also just a quick last, obviously, with where can people find the potential, be the 20th Content Creators Cup team, and then where they can get the all the Infinite Wealth stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me pretty much anywhere at Tim Guest AU, and then to sign up to be a part of the Content Creators Cup or to have a chance to be a part of it, infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy.
Beautiful. Get around it as well. And you can find me at BAILSDT, and you can find us at AFL Fantasy Fans. And as I said at the start as well, our Patreon is live as well. So just after this pod, I'll be doing it. The 3-minute video will be up on the channel. If you guys want to hear about what's on offer, but you can also go to the About section at patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics.
Just quickly, Bales, just before you do wrap, just on the Patreon. So I think it's good you said from the top, what you're getting already, nothing's changing. You're actually going to get more. Now, I actually didn't think it was physically possible for Bales to do anymore, but the guy's a machine. So it will be definitely worth an investment to get his hyper focus on your team and your questions throughout the year. So get around.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest benefit. Like Bales will really deep dive into your team. So I think that's the biggest benefit you can get from being a part of the Patreon.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks, boys. As I said, make sure you get involved. Be good to have a heap of you there and be able to sort of interact a lot more closely with some coaches and that there as well, and go through your teams and just, again, chat every Monday night and a heap of the other content there. And you can also win some cash as well. You win your essentially money back and more if you jump on in for the league as well there. So the code will be given for that towards the close to the season as well. So, yeah, make sure you guys get around that. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks particularly those that sent in questions and players to be discussed. We very much appreciate everyone that tunes in live as always. And thanks as well to Tyler and Tim for their super chats. And if you are listening back on the replay on YouTube, please smash a big thumbs up on the video. That'd be very much appreciated. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can join the 4K club and hit over 4,000 subscribers. And if you are listening back on the pod, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. That'd be very much appreciated. If you leave a review, might be able to read a couple out on the pod as well. So make sure you guys do that. That'd be very much appreciated. We'll be back tomorrow with another head-to-head episode. And very own Jordox jumped on with us to chat with a couple of Carlton midfielders that might be in calculations for your team to start season. So make sure you tune into that. And we'll be back next Sunday reviewing a heap more of the Pracky games. So make sure you guys tune in live next Sunday night. So thanks, everyone. Have a good week. And we'll catch you then. See ya.
See ya.